said that a person that follows his own intellect and his own cleverness will fall into mistakes that will lead to failures and pitfalls that will lead to very bad things and very evil things. There are those that did this big Rishonim, Gedolim, Mefusamim, Ma'id, famous big Rishonim, that they misled the people, and that was all through their following their intellect and their cleverness. The main thing of Judaism is to go in the way of simplicity and innocence without any kind of sophistication, and to see in everything that you do that everything should be not to look at your own self-pride, self-esteem, not to be about you're covered, but to look if there is covered Hashem in what I'm doing, I should do. If not, I shouldn't do. And the Rebbe gives haftacha that if you do this, you will definitely never come into failure. And now Rebbe says that, but even when you fall into doubt, and it seems like the Rebbe is talking about that when are you falling into doubt? When you are going in the way of Tmimis Pshitas. That means even with Tmimis Pshitas you could make mistakes. But the Rebbe gave haftacha that you won't come to Mechsholos Rabbos, you're not going to come to failures and pitfalls. And there are those, the Rebbe says, that fell tremendously. Ma'oid. What? And the Rebbe explains that what means they fell into doubt, and they fell into hirhurim, and that they were mahar acha Hashem Yisbarach, that they were thinking, questioning Hashem. Even so, the nefila and the yerida, the fall and the descent, is the purpose of the ascent, a purpose of the aliyah. That's what the Rebbe says. Inside, kida. So no, why? Ki means it's a reason. I'm explaining kida because no. Ki shayrish kol habriya hu hakavod. The root and the source of the entire creation is covered. Ki kol ma shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu leibara el l'chvodo. Because everything that the Eibishter created in this world, He didn't create it only for His covet. Like it says, Kollel hanikra b'shmi v'lechvaydi barasi af yatzarti. That's the Hemshech HaPasuk. Everything that is called within my name was created for my honor. So now that's a raya that everything that was created in the world was created for covet, right? And now that everything was created for the covet of Hashem, nimtza shekvaydi yizbarach hu shorish kol habriya. So must be that the source and the root of the creation is also covered. The Rebbe is saying something, a svara here. He's not explaining this. He's saying that if the tachlis and the purpose of the bria of creation was for covet, means that the root and the source of the creation was also covered. Because whenever I want to do something and I have a purpose and a goal to get to, my goal is the energy and the power that motivates me to do what I'm doing to be able to get to my goal. Same thing by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If the purpose of creation was for kavod of Hashem, that means that the root and the source of the creation and the power of creation came from kavod. Says the and even though the whole creation is really one, al kol zeh ba'briya yesh chalakim. Al kol zeh is like an interesting lotion, but al kol zeh, that means im kol zeh. It's definitely meduyik. Al kol zeh, I don't know what the Rebbe is saying, but al kol zeh ba'briya yesh chalakim. In the creation, there are parts. Again, va'av pi shekula yechad. Even though the bria was created oneness, that means everything was created as one. There was no separations in the creation. Yet, there were separations. There were parts in the creation, which is a paradox. We said this yesterday. But first he's telling you conceptually. Even though the creation was all one, there are still in the creation, there were parts. And every single part of the creation, yeshbay covered miyuchad shehu sharsha. So the Rebbe is building a platform. He's saying, first of all, the creation was created for the kavod of Hashem, which means that that's the source and the root of the creation. So now the Rebbe is going to another step. So really, that means that everything in the creation is covered, and the source of the creation is covered. Got you. So the creation was created, everything was created as one, which means that everything has this goal, this purpose of kavod of Hashem, which means that it's all sourced. The source and the goal, let's call it the tachlis, are the same exact thing. The Rebbe is saying no. Even though the creation is one, but since the creation was separated into parts, there were parts in the creation, and it's a paradox, because how could one and parts coexist together? But if we know it does, and accept that it does, we'll get to why it does, but right now accept that it does. So, and if we're saying that every part of the creation is also part of the creation, then the purpose is covered, which means that each part of the creation has its own specific covered that is its purpose and is also its source. So, in other words, the way I'm understanding this, and maybe I'm wrong, but the way I'm understanding is there was a covered, a certain type of covered, a global covered that created the entire world. And that was the purpose of the creation, and that's also the source of the creation. Now that the creation was separated into parts, so each part had a specific covenant of Hashem, which means the animals have to bring and then in every animal and everything, it gets dissected and broken down, that everything has its own specific covenant of Hashem, and there is a global covenant of Hashem. The global covenant of Hashem is giving the power to all the parts to have their own specific covenant of Hashem. So far, so good? Okay.
Yeah.
And that is what the Chazal say in Masechtas Avos, that there was 10 times Mamorim, 10 times that Hashem spoke. And those Asar Mamoros, those 10 Vayomers, they were all, that's what created the world. That's what Chazal say. Frag the Mishnah. Why did the Eibishter have to create the world? In 10 Mamoros, he could have created the world with one Maimah. Ella, Zog the Gemara, the reason is, B'shvil Sachar V'Oinish, Nivra B'Asar Mamoros. It was for reward and punishment that the world was created in 10 Mamoros. Now the Rebbe is saying, okay, we need to understand this Chazal, by the way. I'm not going to go into it right now. What's the answer? What is the answer of Schar V'Oinish? The answer of Schar V'Oinish is that if a person, a tzaddik, does a mitzvah that's misak in the world, so it's multiplied by 10. Because there are 10 mamoros, there are 10, he gets schar for 10, as if he wasn't just misak in the global world, but he was misak in 10 parts of the world. And if he did, a Rasha does an Avera, then he was makalkal the world 10-fold, 10 times. It's an interesting Chazal, which needs more of a beer, but let's go back to B'chol Maimah B'Maimah, Yesh Boi B'chinas Kavod Miyuchad, Shehu Sharsha. So now, we said before that when the Bria was created as one, but yet they were separated into parts. And now the Rebbe is defining these parts as Mamorim. So that means each Maimah has its own specific kavod, which is the source and the root of the kavod. Because we said, Kya kavod hu shorish hakol. Because the kavod is the root of everything, the source of everything. And that's pshat in the pasuk. Ubeichaloi, and in the sanctuary, in his sanctuary, kuloi oimer kavod. Everything will say kavod. Shebechol maimah, in every single one of the mamorim, melubash boy kvoida yizbarach. It's enclosed with the kavod of Hashem. Shayidei zeh nivra olam. Through this, the world was created. I don't really understand this. What is the Rebbe saying here? The first part, I accept So I understand it from a place of acceptance. The world was created for covet. And since the purpose is covered, so the root is covered. And even though everything is one in the creation, but there were still chalakim in the creation. So if there's a chelik in the creation, and we just got finished saying that covered is the purpose and the source of the creation, that means that every part has its own specific covered that it has to bring out. Got it. I accept. Next thing is, Chazal say Asar Mamaras. The Rebbe is now saying, Asar Mamaras never oilam. The Eibusher could have created in one mimer. The reason why the Eibusher created in 10 is to give schar v'einish. So the Rebbe is teaching me that he's explaining what he just said before. The Bria is oneness, but yet there's parts. How could that be? The reason is because Asar Mamar is never oilam. That means really the Eibusher created the world in one mimer. But he separated into 10 mamarim. Why? For schar v'einish. The Rebbe is explaining what does that mean, schar v'einish, or the 10 mamaras. The 10 mamaras means that each one has its own specific covenant, which is rooted in the global covenant of the world. Okay. Now he brings this puzzle. What's the raya? Okay, now they built this whole platform. It says that in his sanctuary they're all going to say covenant. So the Rebbe is saying that proves that every mimer has its own clothes with its own covenant. That through this, that's how the world was created. Where do you see that from the pasuk? All the pasuk is saying is in his sanctuary, everything will say covenant, which says that the Rebbe is saying Beichaloi is his sanctuary. His sanctuary is his bria. What's his heichal? The whole bria, the whole creation is his heichal. In his heichal, ubeichalai, in his heichal, kulai, oimer kavod. Everything will say kavod, which means everything means all the parts. What's everything? Kulai. What's everything? Kulai could also mean. By the way, I just thought about kulai could mean all of it, the creation. So that's oneness. And kulai could also mean every part of it. Kulai could mean every part of it will say covered, or kulai could also mean all of it. All of it is oneness. In other words, the Rebbe is proving this paradox. The Rebbe is telling you there is this paradox of oneness and parts that live in the same thing, which is a stira. They're conflicting each other and they're contradicting each other. A part can be one. All parts make up one. So the Rebbe is saying, there is oneness and there's parts, and each part has its covered miyuchad, but it's really all one. All the parts together are one. So the car has an engine and a carburetor and wheels and all different parts to the car. But when they're all together, that's how the car drives. Without one of them, the car doesn't drive. So they are individually they're parts, but together it's something like that. But by the Eibush, it's not as one. In the 6 days of creation, God separated it into parts, but the creation existed as a oneness. The creation was created with conflict of oneness and parts together. Right. And now, but since there were parts, that means every part has its own covenant, which is rooted in the real global covenant of the way the covenant of Hashem.